Eric Aderneck, you are an urban planner. You're a specialist in industrial employment lands. How do you describe what your job is? Because people go, yeah, I hear those titles, but what exactly does it mean?
Well, I actually wear different hats, and I do keep quite busy. So if we look all the way back, I do have a planning degree from Queen's University, and then before that, a Bachelor of Commerce degree from UVic. And during those periods, I was always interested in how do cities get built? How do they operate? What are we looking at here? And certainly part of that is real estate, but you need to have a plan in order before you can start building. So I find that interesting. And part of it really is the fact that I find the jobs aspect of it and the employment aspect and the business aspect of land use and land use planning particularly interesting. I'd have to say not all planners have a business background or an understanding of the development approval process, so that gives me a sort of unique setting or footing in terms of understanding that. So for example, we would say, well, if you make this land use designation here, it's purple, industrial is purple, like my tie, what is going to happen there? Well, how many jobs are going to be there? How many transportation impacts are going to be associated with it, and other types of things. And again, I think of this not just from the planning process, but also from the approval process and the developer process. You can have a nice land use plan, but if it's not financially viable or the market's not there, nobody's going to develop it.
Like you are, I can tell in talking to you that you are fascinated by this. What was it that ignited your imagination that said, yeah, that's what I want to understand? Because, you are, one of a select group of people who gets really quite, excited about what makes a city tick and how to make it work better. What ignited your passion for this?
Well, I don't get excited about too many things, but you're right. I do get excited or passionate about this topic, and I find it very interesting and complex and important. And again, part of that is that it's under-recognized or underappreciated. So we look at different things that are in the news. Affordable housing, very much a legitimate, important topic, and it gets a lot of profile. But again, what about jobs? What about industrial activity? Is it sexy? Apparently not, but it's important for the port. It's important for local manufacturing, distribution, production, repair.
So you said you went to school at Queen's and at UVic?
That's right.
Yeah. What did you study in those two different... I'm going to assume that what part of it was urban planning, of course, but...
Sure, if you want
what was your educational...
Well, I got my grade 12 years ago, and then after that I studied business at University of Victoria, and during that time I took a lot of electives about geography. So I found it very interesting in terms of urban geography, land uses, that type of aspect of, well, where do businesses go? How does the economy function in a spatial way? And then after that, I went to Queen's University in Ontario for 2 years and completed a master's in city planning. In particular, there was a focus in real estate development. So I found that, again, very interesting. And after I graduated, I came back to Metro Vancouver and worked as a consultant looking at the development approval process for all sorts of different types of projects. And actually, during that process, I also finished the UBC Diploma in Urban Land Economics program, which is definitely beneficial for anybody interested in that. And in terms of another side item that I do, I also teach at the Langara Applied Planning program. So if anyone's interested in learning about planning, there is many avenues to learn about that. Plus, I just recently completed a planner for non-planning course at SFU that's open to everybody.
So you are doing consulting, but didn't you wind up also working for Metro Vancouver as well?
So I worked for Metro Vancouver for about 7 years. During that period, I oversaw the industrial lands portfolio in terms of completing a lot of industrial land supply, demand, utilization, intensification studies, doing a lot of research in terms of what was happening here, but also importantly, what is happening in other jurisdictions. Because we say, well, somebody might say, well, intensification is not possible here. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Well, if it's happening in Seattle, or it's happening in a way in San Francisco or LA or New York in a way that we could sort of relate to, then perhaps a few years from now, and those few years from now are now, industrial intensification or redevelopment could occur. It doesn't have to be the Hong Kong or Tokyo example where you have 22-story industrial buildings. That's a little extreme. So again, I was there for 7 years doing that type of work, overseeing some studies by others, and then doing the research itself.
To become an industrial employment land specialist, it's not quite the same as saying I'm going to go become an urban planner. Is there education that would line you up to have the kind of position that you have now, or is it an awful lot of self-driven learning and the experiences that you went through that got you to where you are.
Right. Well, certainly any education gets you familiar with the baseline information, the fundamental issues, the theory perhaps as well. But it's really a matter of applying that in the current context, right? It's when you talk to industrial developers and brokers and tenants, they don't want to hear a planning textbook. They want to hear about stuff that's actually current, relevant, and connected to what they're doing. So over the years, I've developed these relationships with all the people in the industrial sector, provided resources to them, worked for them in different capacities, and explored opportunities for collaboration.
So are you an individual consultant now, or are you part of a larger group?
I do consulting as needed, as well as many other activities, so always happy to help in terms of industrial lands projects.
And so that is your work. You are a consultant for hire to a wide variety of different clients.
That's right, and
Yeah.
you can find a lot more information on my new website, which is mvindustriallands.com.
Great. So what does a typical day for someone like you look like? If somebody's going, Eric, I want to be you, what would my work day or work week look like?
Well, I'm not too sure if too many people want to be like me, but that aside,
Well, they want to have that passion for the work that they do, and it's evident that you like your work.
well, I think it's a matter of staying current with the issues that are in the news and in the industry, and some of that means just reading the newspaper, which not many people do anymore, in terms of what's going on in the economy, planning issues, industrial lands particularly. Some of these things don't always have the word industrial in the news cycle or news title, right? If it's about the economy, it's about taxation, transportation, those relate as well. Certainly staying up on particular industrial lands topics. I just finished writing an industrial land article, actually, that's going to be published in a magazine all about industrial land intensification, profiling some projects in Metro Vancouver, and then pulling in some examples from other jurisdictions in terms of, are the lessons from Vancouver that could be applied there or vice versa?
So let's go back to what a day looks like for you.
Well, not all days start with an interview with you.
No.
But again, staying in contact with people, showing what values we can bring and what work we can do together is definitely part of it. And some of that's on my website. It really depends in terms of what type of project it is. I mean, there's different types of clients, if you will, that need a policy study or a land use demand or supply study, let's say, that's required. That's sort of a higher level study or report, whereas other types of clients require assistance or sometimes strategic advice with individual development applications.
And are you also working with them in their relationship with the local municipalities or city governments?
For sure, that can
Yeah.
be part of it in terms of connecting them, opening the doors, making sure it's clear everybody has a common understanding of what industrial is, bring my expertise to the table and say, well, here's what industry is, here's what it could mean for this site, perhaps how it fits in with your municipal objectives and policies, and make it work for everyone.
If there was a young person saying, okay, you've convinced me, this looks like it's an interesting profession, where would you suggest they get started?
Well, they perhaps could finish a planning degree and a business degree like I have. That's probably not the only avenue, but it really depends on exactly what they want to do. I would certainly encourage them to even contact me. I'm happy to talk to students. When I teach at Langara, I interact with a lot of students, and happy to have that conversation too with individuals.
It's fulfilling work.
It keeps me busy.
Well, and when successful, it creates places of employment for others. And so you have a career that really does matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.